Benny Boy, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Cats and Bolts podcast. I am your host, Sarina Taylor, and you can tell we are rodless. We are rodless. We are also cowbell-less. So I'm very, very, very excited about that. So we've decided very quickly here, we're going to jump right into this. We got a lot of stuff to talk about today. Since we are missing Rod, and we will be missing Rod for a little while, we decided not to call him in because some of us like to talk. So we're going to bring it all in here. And we've just decided amongst the two of us here today that you can take the milestone out of the show, but you cannot take the show out of milestone. Welcome, John Sinclair. John Sinclair is also a milestone kindergarten graduate from Milestone, Saskatchewan, just like Rod Peterson is. Welcome, John.
Thank you for having me. Lovely to be here.
We're so excited. If you guys missed it a few times, it was a while ago. When was the last time you were here?
6 months ago, yeah.
Say he knows because he's been chomping at the bit of when I was going to come back. I texted John. I was like, you want to be on my podcast? And he's like, I was waiting for you to ask. Got in the car, started driving. That was 2 days ago. He's been circling the block ever since. But we are so excited. As you can tell, John and I we're diehard Oilers fans. That's what we grow up as. That's what we want to be. But John, just quickly, before we kind of get into things, tell us about what you do and what your business is.
Yeah, I'm a strength and conditioning coach. So I work with long-term athletic development for athletes of all sports, hockey, of course. But since I moved to South Florida, it's really been tennis, baseball, lacrosse, soccer, those kinds of sports. So, I work on helping athletes get to the next level from high school to college. That's mostly what I do, but then I'm also a medical exercise specialist, help people get out of pain, help people introduce exercise as medicine for disease and chronic conditions as well.
I love that. And we are going to talk about cross-training with athletes and stuff a little bit later. But first and foremost, the Cats and Bolts podcast is brought to you by DraftKings. Also brought to you by the Beach House and Boresco in Pompano Beach, where our lovely friend Thad is the manager. And if you have not seen on the Cats and Bolts Instagram page, Johnny and I were just talking about this, the video of the Rangers fans being escorted out of their seats so far has over 200,000 views on Twitter. It's a big deal. So tell us a story about what you heard about what happened.
Yeah, I heard that the folks that got removed from their seats were just standing and they wouldn't sit back down, which is kind of cool because you're so excited about your team, but not very good fan etiquette. So they got removed. I had some of my clients were there at the game, and it happened just down from them. So yeah.
Big drama here. Okay, before we get into the Rangers and the Panthers series, we do want to chat, obviously, a little bit about the Oilers and Dallas. And I obviously have my thoughts. I'm very frustrated, as a lot of Oilers fans are. I don't feel like I remember a time as an Oilers fan where I wasn't frustrated in the playoffs with something or another. But hit me with what some of the things that you've seen in your take on the first 3 games of the series so far.
Game 1 was the most complete game I've ever seen Edmonton play with this crew, right? And all season long. My rookie assessment of it was that Edmonton came out flying. When they're forechecking, they're almost impossible to beat. But what they did differently, which was so different from the rest of the games of the playoffs, is that they were forechecking from the backside of the puck. So that means you're forechecking with your butt facing your own goal, right? And when they do that and they attack at the right angles, there's no other play for the team. And so they walked all over Dallas in the first game. I thought that was their most complete game they've played yet this playoff series. Game 2, it was a little hit and miss. It was a little roller coastery kind of game, and they didn't come out with the result that they were looking for. Game 3 dominated the first period. Dallas looked lost. Dallas hasn't won a game when trailing 2 goals in the playoffs. So I don't know if Edmonton took that as, we're going to walk all over these guys. They came out and they looked so discombobulated. They didn't look like they even knew what position to play. They were all chasing the pucks. Their feet were standing still. I don't know what happened in the second period or what they said in the locker room or what was going on, but it looked like a completely different team, and then tried to rebound a little bit in the third period, but it was a bit too late, I think.
I think that's what always happens with the Oilers. We're grizzled old Oilers fans. Yeah. We've seen the good, we've seen the bad. They get up too much, and they start trying to play too defensively.
Yeah.
Just play the game you've been playing.
Yeah.
It almost bit them in the butt in Game 7 against Vancouver. It was 3-0 after the second intermission, going into the third period. I don't think there was one Oilers fan who were like, we got this in the bag, because we've seen it.
Yep.
We know. And sure enough, it was a 3-2 game, bing, bing. Yep. But I feel like Edmonton is just not playing consistent enough to beat Dallas the way they are right now. Agree or disagree?
I disagree. I think Edmonton will beat them. I think they're far too powerful on offense. I think they need to get more pucks at the net, get some sloppy goals, and Connor needs to shoot more. I mean, I hate being that fan. You've been in the stands with people that don't really understand the game all that well, and all you hear is shoot, shoot, shoot. Mm-hmm. But Connor needs to shoot more. I mean, if not to take anything away from Verhaeghe in Florida, but if he can get 20 shots on goal, Connor has more opportunities with the puck on his stick. So get the puck to the net. That's exactly what they did in the first goal last game, was got the puck to the net, bounces off Hyman, goes in. So just keep doing that, right? Same thing on the second goal. Got the puck to the net, jammed away at it, they got another goal. So I think if Connor comes out with that mentality and all the guys kind of rally behind that, and they're not trying to make the most beautiful sports desk worthy play, I think they've got a real good shot. And, I think the only thing that really stood out to me is when Bouchard doesn't quite have his wits about him, we're left in a hole. But when he's on top of his game, it's almost like all the defense plays that much better. So it's a real weird cosmic kind of thing I think that's happening with them, is when they're not moving their feet on defense and they're sitting back waiting. Like you said, they don't do well playing defense. I think they need to attack in all three zones.
Agreed. And I think the one thing that I noticed that really was something I haven't seen in decades was how quickly they move the puck out of their own zone, and how well.
It's beautiful.
I haven't seen that in years. Yeah. And now we have Paul Coffey there and everybody's happy. So if your weakest link for the past 2 decades has essentially been your defense and your goaltending, and now it's the strongest part, and you have the two best, arguably best players in the world right now playing up front, you're just missing out. But let's talk about the Rangers and the Panthers.
Yeah.
I'm not probably, I can't say I'm shocked at what I've seen so far in this series. Close games, back and forth, all that kind of stuff. I originally picked the Rangers in 6. I still feel like the first 4 games, I truly felt like the Rangers could have won all of them at one point or another. I can't say the same for the Panthers. I still feel like the Rangers are going to beat them.
Interesting. I had Panthers in 7. I just like the way the Panthers, again, I'm a big forechecking kind of guy, so I just love the way that they attack. I love the spirit that they play in. When they're hitting, they are also a very dominant team, but Rangers are a counter-punching team, right? Mm-hmm. Like you make a mistake in your own end, they come the other way, they score. Like that's the style of hockey they play, and I love it. I just think that when push comes to shove, I think Bob is going to steal another game, yet. Game 5, Game 6 maybe, and it's going to go to 7. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I'd say at this point, anything can happen. Any predictions, like at the end of the day, both of these conference finals are tight.
Yep. And
a lot of the series in the playoffs so far have been tight. Granted, give or take a couple here and there, but even that Rangers-Carolina series got a lot tighter than I thought it was going to by games 5 and 6.
Yeah. Carolina disappointed me a little bit. I thought they would have a better playoff run, just the experience that they've had. And I wasn't really putting a lot of stock in the Rangers, and I didn't watch them a lot this year, but like they can play and they can make big plays when they need to, and I mean, Shesterkin is ridiculous. I mean, all these guys, Shesterkin, Bobrovsky, Ottinger and Skinner, they've been making some big-time highlight saves.
Absolutely. Right. I mean, everybody's going to complain about Edmonton's weak goaltending, or there's a lot of people getting on Skinner. But at the end of the day, you got to put the puck in the net.
Well, I mean, like there's save percentages, kind of a snickety kind of thing, because if those goals are going in from high percentage places, I think there's saves when they're off in the corner and you've got you've got a good angle and you make that save versus shots that are coming from high percentage goal areas, right? And if there's a higher goals against from those goals, save percentage is kind of like how it's kind of, I'm trying to think of the word for it. It's not really as reliable as a stat. You have to almost look at where the shot's coming from and then where did those goals come from in those scoring areas, right? And so I think the goals scored against Edmonton were coming from prime shooting spots, right? Like they're not breakaways or anything, but they're like in the slot, giveaway, leave the puck behind, as what happened to McLeod. Like those are like prime shooting areas. And when Skinner attacks the puck with his angles and he sits back, he doesn't get a very good angle on it and he's in a bad position. But when he's attacking, he's making crazy saves. And so those ones, like, yeah, it's only one save, but it was a game-changing save.
Yeah, there's a lot of psychology, I think, behind that too. But it was interesting what we were just talking about, the save percentages, and stats are just stats at the end of the day. But Rod and I were talking the other day because he was here for however long and now he's back in Canada. So he's watching the Hockey Night in Canada broadcast. And you and I pretty much both mute the ESPN broadcast. Yeah. Like it's embarrassing. But one thing Rod said, he was on a show in Toledo this week. He went on somebody's show in Toledo, and the announcer there, the guy he was talking to that was interviewing Rod, was like, Americans, the way they broadcast the game is so different. They talk about, well, this team has more goals 5-on-5 than this team, and there's these shot attempts is like the latest stat. We don't talk about that stuff in Canada. No. It's like, who cares? But I think it kind of comes from, and Rod had brought this up, and I've felt this way for years, because you and I have lived south of the border in climates for a long time where hockey's not the biggest sport, and that's okay. But you have to talk about stats because sometimes the people delivering the message don't have the knowledge to talk about anything else. So they start making up all these stats. Like I saw somebody posted something about the shot attempts in this series. I was like, shot attempts? A goalie from the other side could have a shot attempt if he ices the puck down. Sure. Like, what a stupid stat. Agree or disagree?
No, I completely agree with that. It doesn't matter how many shots you take if the puck doesn't get to the net.
Agreed.
Right? So if that could be, you could have 20 blocks in a game. It's still a shot attempt, but that block might have happened at the top of the circles, right? So, I mean, those are things that most people won't think about. A better one is how much possession time did you have in the offensive zone? That might be a better metric because it shows that you're putting pressure on them and they're being affected defensively, right? And
I agree with that.
That makes more sense to me to speak about that than it does to shot attempts.
If I'm a coach in the NHL, I would want to know the possession in the offensive zone of my team more than shot attempts. When Carolina was playing the Rangers, I think it was game 6. Carolina's time in the offensive zone in 60 minutes was like 39 minutes or something crazy like that. To me, that shows your team is doing something right. So where do you fix it from there, right? Yeah. It's like we're doing the right things. Now where's the disconnect?
Well, it goes back to that New York's a counter-punching team, right? So they had less time in the offensive zone, but were able to capitalize and score more goals, right? And there's nothing, I don't care if you want to be the most defensive team in the world, and there was this thing that went on in all sports that defense wins championships. I'm telling you right now, nothing changes the complexity of game more than a goal being scored. Nothing. Momentum changes, everything changes, right? Like your strategy changes every time a goal is scored. So the most important metric is goals scored, right?
It's like Wayne says, best defense is a good offense.
Yes.
You can't,
and if I'm Edmonton, I'm attacking all the time. Because the last time I checked, nobody has scored a goal from their own end 5-on-5 with goalies in the net. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So keep it in their end. Like if I'm up 3-4 goals, keep it in the offensive zone. Don't lay back and give them an opportunity to shoot on the net. Keep it in the offensive zone. Forecheck 3 guys.
Take chances. You can trust your defense. Yes. They're going to pull it back up and bring it back up. Okay, so fun topic. Speaking of agree or disagree, this is what we're going to do, agree or disagree. So I'm going to give my opinion, and then I want you to agree or disagree. Here's the first one. The NHL is worse off now than it was 30 years ago with new divisions, 32 teams, all that crap. Agree or disagree?
I like more. Well, I have to say agree or disagree.
Well, you can
Worse off.
you can give me both. It's fine. There's no right or wrong answer, John. It's okay.
I disagree.
Okay.
I don't think they're worse off. I think it's nice that there's more teams. I don't like the alignment of the divisions. To me, those don't make sense the way they've aligned them. Maybe I'm a traditionalist. I'd love to see them go back to Smythe, Norris, Adams, Patrick kind of idea, because they really had a lot of really cool. I mean, cities have rivalries, right? So when you put Detroit in the mix of Chicago, right, in the mix of Minnesota, like there are other rivalries in other sports. So those can kind of work in that kind of same realm, right? Is that I can create a rivalry between Chicago, but if you throw them in the Eastern Conference, that doesn't even make any sense to me.
I agree, but I'm a traditionalist, so I like the old, Norris division or whatever. We obviously love the Smythe division. That's where the Oilers were, and it's odd to me that you would take away the traditions and change that. There was no reason to change it. I don't know why they would.
Travel, maybe. Cost of travel. I mean,
but even the names.
The names
makes no sense.
And then we hold on to names of trophies.
Yeah. Well,
right? Why is there still an Art Ross and a Hart trophy?
Yeah.
Like, call out the Wayne Gretzky trophy. Or,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
I like the tradition though. Sure. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. That was good. Me personally, I miss the red line. Agree or disagree?
No, I disagree with that one.
Okay.
I for those that are listening to this and don't understand what the red line is, you're relating it to the 2-line pass, right?
Yeah.
Or 2-line offside.
Yeah.
So I like that it's opened up. I think what has changed the most though is icing calls, right? Is if you were even within a stick length away from the puck, that icing was usually waved off. Now they're calling icing regardless. So you're getting more stoppages from icing than I think we ever had before. Obviously, because it was a touch icing, so you'd have to go and touch the puck for the icing. I like that it's just across the goal line like we have in minor hockey in Canada, where that's icing. And but I think there's more stoppages as a result of that. And I wonder if they do that so that there's more offensive zone face-offs as opportunities to score, because the defensive team now can't change. So I wonder if maybe that's kind of why linesmen have let up on, like, it has to be, even if you are kind of dogging it a little bit, they would wave that off, right? Now it's like, even if it's close to you, they keep the icing on.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously for injury purposes, right? Guys were going full tilt into the boards, killing themselves, which that's never a good thing. I prefer the touch icing, but I understand it.
Yeah.
It's dangerous.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. The next thing on here was ESPN is awful, but we already kind of touched that. But I'm just going to throw that out there. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. If they didn't have Wayne
on TNT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So Wayne's on TNT, Mark.
Yeah.
And PK.
ESPN and TNT is sorry here.
I mean, they're doing their best, but I think that the challenge for me, I mute the sound of it so I don't have to listen to the commentary. And it might be because I really enjoy the Canadian broadcasts and was so used to them. Throughout the season, we would pick up some of the Sportsnet games, and it was maybe it's nostalgia. Although my wife Lisa and I were saying, you could have a Ray Ferraro drinking game going on every time he says beauty. So that brought me home a little bit, because he's saying, oh, look at these two beauties. And then it's like, oh, drink.
He does say beauty a lot, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I like Ray, though.
Ray's great.
I like Ray because probably if you're talking about nostalgia, Ray and Gord Miller were calling a lot of the games back on TSN, and Ray is a beauty himself. But you're right, they're trying, but at the same time, hockey's been in the United States for over 100 years. If you look at Tampa. As soon as Dave Randorf needed a job, Tampa hired him. They hired a Canadian that knew what he was doing. Why wouldn't every team do that? You know what I'm saying? Unless they have a good one, which is fine, but most of them don't.
Well, I just think if you're going to try and grow the game, and we talked about this the other day about penalties being called and not being called the right thing, and then you've got people that maybe don't have as much background in the sport trying to explain it to the end consumer or the person that's watching it. The challenge then is you have to be crystal clear on what it is that you're saying. It almost seems like they're not willing to help explain what's going on in the rule during the broadcast. What was it? The game 2, the Rangers high stick the puck down to themselves in the neutral zone, get the game winning goal in overtime. And I was even just like, wait a minute, that's high sticking. You can't high stick it over your and then touch the puck yourself. When did that rule change? Obviously, no one in America has explained it to me, right? Because I was like, that's high sticking. What are we doing here? And I would only venture to guess that the Canadians would have explained like, no, you can high stick it to yourself in the neutral zone, just not in the offensive zone. Okay, good. I would have known that then, you know?
Yeah, it's even 100%. There's a little bit more like, if there is a rule change and it's shocking to people, the Canadian announcers will explain that. Yeah. Here, it's like they maybe just don't know. It's fine, whatever. Yeah. But like even in the intermissions, you watch Hockey Night in Canada intermission and you have quality information on there. And here I'm like, you got Bissonnette acting like a fool and Subban acting like a fool. I'm like, holy man, can we just like, but I think
that's the difference between entertaining and informing. Right, we're used to informing. Like, give us more information that we want to know because, like, this is in our blood. Whereas ESPN is an entertainment sports network, right?
Yeah, true.
I mean, if it wasn't entertainment, how would what's his name have his own show? Pat McAfee.
Yeah,
purely entertainment.
Yeah,
right?
You're right. Good point. Okay, well, as far as hockey's concerned,
yes.
Here we are.
Thankfully, he is trying to promote hockey. He's one of the only guys at the show that is promoting hockey.
Yeah, all of a sudden...
He's got the Hockey is Awesome segment, which is great.
All of a sudden, one day he had Connor Bedard on there. Everyone's like, wait a second, what? Like, This is Pat McAfee in his tank top. Okay. Montreal won 4 Stanley Cups. The 70s, the Islanders came along, won 4 right in a row again. The Oilers won 5 out of 7. I firmly believe there will not be, in our lifetime, another dynasty in the NHL. Agree or disagree?
I agree. There's too much parity in the league. The salary cap has made it a lot harder for you to keep the same group together. I don't think Leon and Connor will be together much longer, right? I mean, I think it's just players are getting spread out amongst teams. It's harder to build chemistry. It's harder to win every year. What year was Lafreniere drafted?
Like probably 2020, 21?
Right. So in 5 years, the Rangers went from one of the worst teams in the league to the best. Right? So now can they hold on to that? That remains to be seen. But it's harder to build a team, I think, and then keep all those guys there and keep all those pieces in place. The NHL maybe recognized that when they did the expansion thing, and they went, well, we'll just poach from all the teams, set a super a team that has 16 second line players on it, right? In terms of your forwards, and then just let them run rickshaw over everybody, which is what they did, right?
Just think about when we grew up, we were very fortunate. Watching the Oilers win every year was like a piece of cake. But think about back then, we didn't talk about the depth of the third and the fourth line. Yeah. Everybody was good.
Yeah, even when you looked at the Islanders, like the Islanders' depth from top to bottom was ridiculous. Like, Nystrom was an animal, and no one ever talks about Bob Nystrom anymore, right? And so then the Oilers had to get that depth, right? Like they had to learn how to beat the Islanders in order for them to actually go on their dynasty. I don't know if any teams are ever going to compete with a dynasty type of mentality. Tampa was maybe the closest that we've had, right? In a long time. Mm-hmm. Pittsburgh before that.
Yeah, they won 2 in a row. Yeah.
So 2 teams that won 2 cups back to back. But yeah, it's tough enough to win 1, let alone 2, 3, 4. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane to think that that's what it was. And there was 21 teams in the league then. It's not like there was 6 like there was back in the day. But so that brings me to some fun trivia that I wanted to throw at you, because I like to nerd out on trivia stuff. I could scroll all day reading some stats. And I knew the answer to this, but I'm a nerd in this kind of stuff, and I don't know where you stand on this. Do you know what player, as a player, has won the most amount of Stanley Cups?
Yeah. Jean Beliveau.
As a player.
Oh, as a player.
Yeah.
Or Yvon Cornway?
No.
Cornway had 9, didn't he?
Yeah.
Beliveau had 11? 2 as a coach?
No, Beliveau, so between being a player and being in the head office, Beliveau won 17 Stanley Cups.
Okay.
It's mind-blowing.
That is crazy.
The player that won the most Stanley Cups is Henri Richard with 11.
Okay.
Isn't that mind-blowing? His own brother, who is the pride of Montreal, won 9. Cornway, guys like that won 9.
Yeah.
That's when there was 6 teams in the league.
Right.
So it's a little different. You're going to win, right? This is the stat that blew my mind. There's only a couple of players that have played in, like, I don't want to say recently, but are, it would probably shock you. Speaking of a dynasty, there hasn't been a lot of players that have won more. Like Sid's won 3 Stanley Cups. Mm-hmm. That's really it. Mm-hmm. Mark Messier.
5.
6. Mark Messier won 6.
6, you're right.
Which is
5 with Edmonton, 1 with New York.
I think Curry won 5. There's
Kevin Lowe.
There's one other player that won 6.
Wasn't Kevin Lowe?
No.
Well, because he won all the. Oh no, he wasn't with Edmonton in 1990, was he?
Yeah, he was, but I don't think he was there in '84. I don't think Kevin Lowe. But either way, there's a player that it blew my mind. Brian Trottier won 6 Stanley Cups.
Yeah, because he won 2 with Pittsburgh.
Right. That's exactly what I said. Oh yeah, he won 2 with Pittsburgh. Here's the reality of this, people. This is only 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And Mark Messier would have been the last one in 94. Trottier was what, 91, 92 in Pittsburgh? It was 91, 92 in Pittsburgh. Yeah. Can you even wrap your head around the fact that we have guys that played in a 21 league team that won 6 Stanley Cups in their career? So you played 20 years, whatever, 6 Stanley Cups as a player.
Yeah.
Henri Richard, like 11 is okay. It's Montreal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it blew my mind.
Was good.
But it pretty much all the Stanley Cup winners really are in the order, like Montreal and then Edmonton.
Yeah.
Because even though the Leafs have won 13 Stanley Cups, they were scattered. So there wasn't a lot of guys that played for the Leafs that won more than 4 Stanley Cups.
I see.
Yeah.
You know what's also interesting is, and try to explain this, is like we grew up watching the greatest generation of hockey players. Like there's so much hype around how much they're bigger and faster and skilled. Like Wayne will say it all the time because Wayne Gretzky will never pump his own tires.
Yeah.
he'll pump the NHL before he'll pump his own. And then you look at his stats and it's ridiculous. But we grew up in a generation watching players, 9 out of the top 11 scorers of all time played in the 80s and the 90s. That's pretty amazing.
It's crazy to think, but the game was so much different. And that kind of actually brings me to another thing that I want to talk about with you, because the players we see are very athletic right now. Mm-hmm. They're athletic, but they're not great hockey players. Like I can't look at the Panthers lineup, the whole lineup, or the Oilers or whoever and say, that's a great hockey player. I just can't. And
so where would you rank Ken Linseman of all time of Edmonton Oiler players?
Oh, like
seriously,
slow. Like,
okay,
right.
So I watched a game, 1984 final game. I watched it a couple months ago because it was on Hulu. You can watch all these classic games, right? So I watched the Stanley Cup winning game. It was played in Edmonton, and I'm watching Ken Linseman. I'm like, that is one of the smartest hockey players I've ever seen play. And I didn't really think of him as that as a kid, because how do you think of Ken Linseman when you got Gretzky, Curry, Messier,
agreed.
Coffee, right? But you watch him play, and it was like, if any of the NHL players today had the brain that guy did, like I was like, this game would be so different. But you make a really good point. I think there's a lot of hockey players have higher levels of skill, but maybe not as much hockey IQ as back in the day. And so watching that Islanders-Oilers final in '84, that was beautiful hockey to watch.
It was
Beautiful hockey. There wasn't any stick hand. Lisa laughs at me all the time. I'm like, you stick handled yourself out of a pass, right?
yeah.
Because they're always doing this before they want to pass the puck. It was like pucks on your stick, it's gone. Pucks on your stick, it's gone. There's no fooling around in the defensive zone. Like the quality of play in '84, even though their equipment wasn't as good, and people make fun of these guys that, well, the goalies weren't as big. I was like, Andy Moog was standing on his head, and I would give anything to have Andy Moog in our net in Edmonton right now. Like, he was unbelievable, right?
With pads that were the size of those boxes.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. No, it kind of brings me to what I wanted to talk to you about specifically, because this is, you talk about like how much education you have as far as fitness is concerned and whatever. And we've talked about this off the air. The hockey IQ and the skill, the overall skill is not where it used to be. In my opinion, here's why. Kids, I don't have a context other than Canada versus California or here, because that's where I've lived. Kids don't love the game here. They don't love the game. They think they do. But I don't see kids out on the street playing street hockey every day like we used to play. And as soon as the ice melted, because guys, newsflash, not all of us could afford artificial ice. It was natural ice. When that ice melted, we were out on the street playing every single day in the slush. And we begged our English teacher to play floor hockey every class. We thought we deserved to go play floor hockey instead of learn how to construct a sentence. We love hockey, and I don't see that here. And so, but kids are push, and they play hockey year round here. Mm-hmm. It's not teaching them anything. They're not perfecting their skills. Half these kids can't even skate. Their ankles are, because they're used to skating with a stick. Mm-hmm. What would you tell parents from a physical, figure it out, don't screw up your hips like Patrick Kane standpoint to make sure that the kids are prepared?
Number one, don't play hockey year round. Play it for the length of the time that a hockey season is supposed to be, and then go play another sport. So we're talking, if you're age 7 through to 14, you shouldn't be playing hockey year round. And I would even push that to 16. Okay? After the age of 16, then you now can start to specialize in certain things. But I never played hockey year round at all in my life. I played 14 different sports in high school, including track and field and all the events I did in track and field. But I played all those sports because the seasons dictated that you had to play those sports. When I talk to kids today, they get so structured that they lose that ability to go and find their own style of play. Like, you watch hockey now, you don't know who's who. You have to look for the number on their jersey to determine who they are. But in the 80s and the 90s, you knew Joe Sakic from Steve Yzerman by the style in which they skated. That wasn't taught to them. That was learned by them discovering their own ability, right? So they would microdose their performance. How would they do that? They'd work on some of their stick handling for 10 minutes between classes. They would go to the rink when they got a chance to and play shinny more often than they would put their gear on in practice, right? Wayne Gretzky spent all day in the backyard in unstructured ways to become the greatest athlete of all time. So if we look at from a performance standpoint, where I make my money is having to offset the fact that people are doing the same thing all the time. And that's kind of shocking to me, is that I have built a career around something that I'm fighting against. Doesn't that seem ironic? Sort of like, I'm having to offset the most basic things. You could save a lot of money for me from bringing them to me and just take them and have them play soccer instead of having them play hockey year round. You know what I mean? There's no evidence that suggests that if you work on your skill year round that you're going to be a better player in any sport. In fact, what we do know is that you're far more likely to get injured or burnt out by the time you hit the critical years of development, which are between 16 and 22.
Yeah, it's wild to me. You know, when I first came here and these kids, like, they might get a 2-week break. I'm like, what? Like, Wayne played baseball in the summer and he's the best player. And Canadians don't play hockey year round and they're still better.
Yep.
So like, what does that tell you? I remember when some of my friends, and I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus here, but I was watching some of my friends' kids play hockey in the winter here or whatever. And one of the parents said to me, she's like, let's be honest, none of these kids are going to the NHL. I'm like, right. So why are you guys acting like it?
Right.
Why do you treat, like, look at Jeff Chikrin. Jeff Chikrin coached minor hockey here. Where did he send his kid to play? Canada. Where did Jacob develop his skills? Not playing in Florida. They don't have the ability to do that. So stop. It's like, it would just be like me banging my head against the wall for a year straight instead of 6 months. I'm still going to have a goose egg, but it's going to be bigger.
Yeah.
It's doing more damage than good because they're not developing the skills because they don't have them.
Yep.
They're not developing somewhere else.
Yeah, and so motor skills is what's required to develop athleticism. The only way you become a better athlete is you accumulate better motor skills and you become efficient and economical at developing those skills and performing those skills, which means that you have better accuracy, you have better precision, you have the ability to change directions without actually having to think about it. But you can get that from playing other sports. You can do that from doing other activities. So when athletes come to me, we focus on the things that aren't related to hockey. Why? Because I want to make you a better overall athlete. I want to make you have motor skills that you wouldn't get from the game. So I'm essentially their off-season program. And in off-season training for hockey players, that's what we should do. We should not be trying to replicate what you did in season. And I'm telling you right now, the professional guys that have coached, they don't even want to think about hockey in the off-season. They don't even want to touch it, right? They want to spend time in the gym enjoying the process of just doing something different. So this pursuit of always trying to get kids to do the same thing over and over and over again year round to get better, it's a fallacy and it needs to disappear because it's doing more harm to our long-term development than anything else. One of the things I spend a lot of time with hockey players on is working on their foot and their ankle because they've got 8 months where their foot and the ankle is strapped in a skate. So the mechanoreceptors in their foot are not active. They don't receive information from the ground very well because they've been on a blade, right? So the joints all throughout the body need the foot and the ankle to be active in order to be mobile at the next segment above it, right? And to be healthy. So we spend a lot of time in our bare feet in the summertime, right? And that's how we want to train hockey players in the off season. If you put them in a skate year round, their foot is not going to do its job. And then guess what? Your knee's vulnerable, your hip's vulnerable. If your big toe doesn't do its job, you're going to get a groin tear. So you need to train the big toe to do its job, to slow down how fast the femur accelerates into internal rotation. So when I need to get onto my inside edge, my femur needs to go into internal rotation. When the big toe doesn't do its job, and it can't do its job in a skate, we have to retrain that. So if you want to be faster in the off season, you decide you want to go to the park to sprint and change directions, your big toe doesn't even know what it's doing. You are a hip flexor and groin injury away from not even starting the season.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sinclair. Nerd.
Nerd.
And my guess is there's going to be about 0% of people who are actually going to agree with that and realize that because they're just like, no, it's not. People are so scared to miss out. They're scared their kid is going to miss out. People, relax. Okay, one final thing. Totally not hockey related. We're both from the prairies, both from Saskatchewan. If you could tell the beautiful people of Florida, because it's so friggin' hot here, where would you go if you had a 10-day trip in Western Canada? Where would you go? What would you do?
I would go, well, I'm biased for Saskatchewan because I love it there. So I have a property still at Lake Diefenbaker, which I think is one of the most beautiful places in the world. So I would start there because that's where I'm from and that's where I love to go. And that lake is amazing. It's so beautiful there. And then I would go probably a little bit further west and get towards Canmore, Alberta. Maybe go to Lake Louise. That's a beautiful place. You actually think that you died and went to heaven because there's no place more beautiful than that. So I'd probably pick those two spots. How about you?
I would probably have to say that I'd probably start in Alberta, go to Moraine Lake because we've been to Moraine Lake. It's incredible.
That color.
The water's like, they call it Gatorade blue.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, there's places up there like Banff, Moraine Lake, all that kind of stuff. But quick, funny story. A guy that I used to go to the gym with here, he's originally from New Hampshire, and he had like a hockey tattoo like everybody does. And I was like, it's a maple leaf I'm like, hey, where are you from? He's like, New Hampshire. I'm like, why do you have a maple leaf and hockey sticks tattooed on your leg? He's like, went to Notre Dame.
Oh, in Wilcox.
Yeah. And yeah,
I was
Notre
supposed
Dame
to go to
High
that
School.
school.
So he goes, I fell in love with Saskatchewan. And he goes, I told my wife, he's like, I want to go there on our 10-year anniversary. And she kind of put like the reins on that. But, it's like until you've experienced it, you just don't understand. And he loves it. He's like, it's beautiful there. The people are nice. And he's like, I would go back in a heartbeat.
Well, it's funny. My wife and I drove back last summer, all the way from here, all the way back to Saskatchewan. And it was weird when we got to Saskatchewan. Like, we were just like, where is everybody?
I know.
Right? And it was like, it's only been 10 years, but it was like a shock. And then what was really crazy, and this was bizarre, when you get to Lake Diefenbaker coming from the east side and you're going to the west side, you have to cross a ferry.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been to that spot more times than I can remember. And we pulled up there, and it was like my brain didn't compute that I was actually in that spot. It was the first time that I actually thought maybe the Matrix is a real thing. Is that all these programs were getting put into my head, and I'm like, is this actually real? I'm like, is this a real spot? Like, I don't know. Can I poke through it? Like, what's going on? It was so weird.
You're delirious from driving 9
Well,
days.
it could have been that.
Okay, John, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Well, we'll see what happens over the next few days. Thanks, you guys, for watching. If you have any questions, send them to us in the DMs. We would love to answer your questions on every podcast. And you guys have a great week.
Oilers game. What are we thinking? Oilers in
Don't even
7?
Don't even look at me. Don't even look at me. I don't even want to talk about it.
I'm so nervous. I'm like nervously confident.